Instead of having like bean pasta, you're going to have the meal that you would have had with the pasta, but you're going to actually eat the actual bean. Hi, welcome to the Judy Terrell Show, where I explore topics intended to optimize every body 50, 60, 70, and above. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Judy Terrell Show. I am Judy Terrell, and I am so excited. I am now in my third series of 6 podcast series, and this is our second episode in this series. And for this series, my third one, I am focusing in on what do the over 50, 60, 70, 80, and above age population of men and women need to do differently when it comes to eating in order to either lose weight, maintain a healthy weight, and or help manage a variety of health conditions from diabetes to heart issues and high blood pressure and all our chronic illnesses, basically. I myself am a health coach, so I have people referred to me to help do behavioral medicine for managing a variety of health conditions. And, my number one client, though, is somebody coming to me who's 50 plus, who needs to lose weight. Basically, their adipose tissue is too high. They're not feeling really good. Not even just how they look in their bodies, but how they feel in their bodies. And so I've been working in this industry for 40 years, and I'm 59 years old myself, and I have a lot of insights and a lot of database to draw from to help you, those of you listening to this podcast, on what might help you to lose weight, manage weight, optimal weight, and manage health conditions if you're over 50, men and women both. All right. So let's dive into this topic. What I have observed through the years of working with people is that there is no one way that everybody should eat. Not the paleo plan will work for some people and not for others. The all plant-based vegan plan will work for some people and not others. In some cases, what will make someone feel fantastic could actually make someone feel very poorly and actually exacerbate some health conditions that they're trying to improve. So I'm not married to any one particular, breakdown of the macronutrients. I do believe that everybody needs all three: protein, carbohydrate, both in the form of vegetables and fruits, and starchy carbohydrates, and fats, healthy fats. And everybody needs all three of those macronutrients. It's just that some people need more of one than another. Some people need more of another than another. And but everybody needs all three. And that is the base premise that I'm going to base this podcast on. Everybody needs all three of those. And that does kind of fly in the face of current kind of disbelief, I'll say, where all carbohydrates are bad, especially starchy carbohydrates. They should be avoided like the plague. I'm not saying that this is true. I'm saying that this is what a lot of clients come to me thinking that they need to do, and that is not correct. So everybody needs to have some starchy carbs in their eating plan. But if you're over 50 and you've gone through, women and post-menopause, you've lost estrogen and progesterone, you are digesting those starchy carbs differently than when you were a younger woman. And males, although they don't go through the same, hormonal massive changes as females, you are also experiencing, a variety of things: leptin resistance, insulin resistance, which happens to everybody as we get older. And so you too must, have to make different choices when it comes to the starchy carbs than you did when you were a younger man. Now, making different choices does not mean eradicating them 100%. And I'm going to say that for 2 reasons. Number one is ultimately you will be driven to consume them because we need a certain amount of glycogen in our muscles. And when that gets depleted after a certain period of time, and then you have it available to you and you're, interfacing with it, you're going to cave because that's a human survival instinct, number one. And the other reason is that because we are surrounded by it, even if you believe lock, stock, and barrel that they're, you shouldn't eat them, you're interfacing with them like 24/7 every day. And unless you're going to live in your own house till the day you die and you don't go out to dinner and you don't go to parties and you don't go anywhere there's social events involving food, you are going to have to manage, starchy carbohydrates. So, if you don't buy into the belief that everybody needs to be eating them as a human, just to what amount, you do buy into. We live in a culture where you're exposed to them all the time. So for one of those two reasons, if not both, we got to figure out how to manage them in your eating plan when you're over 50. All right. So I have observed this, what I'm going to tell you to do in this podcast, especially in my over 50 women who are trying to be vegan or completely plant-based, and their husbands are doing the same regime and they're losing weight, and yet the women are not. And that's when I first came up with this hack I'm going to tell you, or this solution to the problem of trying to eat the right foods and yet not seeing weight loss, specifically for women, but I have subsequently applied it now to men also, and it works across the board. So starchy carbohydrates, to clarify our terms, are carbohydrates that have longer chains of the chemical makeup of a carbohydrate, sugar chains, and they take longer. They're more complex. There's more energy in them. Unlike a vegetable, let's say, that has some carbohydrate in it, but it has a lot of fiber and a lot of water, and so it's a different type of carb. We need those too, but that is not where the problem lies when you're over 50. Where it lies is in these starchy carbohydrates. So that's the chemical definition of what a starchy carbohydrate is. But what it is in food is, it's your starchy vegetables. So potatoes, white potatoes, red potatoes, purple potatoes, sweet potatoes. It is your beans, kidney beans, black beans, navy beans, chickpeas, all that whole category of foods. It is any of your root vegetables, yucca and taro, to name a few others, but they're anything that you'd pull out of the ground, rutabagas, turnips, beets. It is your winter squashes, butternut, acorn, delicata, corn kernels, not before they've been mashed into something else, but corn on the cob, or corn kernels that have been cut off the cob, and peas. So those are your starchy vegetables, and that is a category of starchy carbs. Also starchy carbs are all your grain products. So you've got whole grains, you've got oatmeal, and you have whole wheat and brown and black and wild rice. And in this category would we put quinoa, which is actually a seed, but it's often put into the starchy grain category. And it would be anything, oatmeal, forgot that one, steel cut, rolled oats. And the grain products are also, they're whole grains, made into a variety of more processed carbs, starchy carbs, such as breads, whole grains, sprouted grain breads, various pastas, whole wheat pasta, corn pasta. Now they're even making pastas out of the starchy vegetables, so you can have bean pasta and lentil pasta. Variety of breads, I think I mentioned, your wraps and tortillas, bagels, muffins, and so on and so forth. All things made out of flours from grain products or flours from your starchy vegetables. All right. So that basically covers pretty much what are carbs, starchy carbs. Now, here's the hack. Many of my clients trying to lose weight are going to they do the gluten-free thing. So they're thinking, all right, I'm going to do gluten-free and that's going to help me lose weight. So I'm not going to have, gluten pasta. I'm going to have corn pasta or even bean pasta. All right. A lot of clients are trying to lose weight. They will, they're going to have the whole grain breads as opposed to white flour, or they're going to, have a low carb, gluten-free rice flour wrap that has inulin added, so it'll say high fiber on it. But what do those things have in common, these last couple products I just mentioned, is that they're made from the starchy vegetables or the grains, and they're refined down, processed into flours, all right? In my first podcast in the series, I said, we want to really stay away from the processed anything. And so the processed carbs that have been turned into pastas, anything out of a flour, especially those that are, robbed of their fiber, white flour, things like that, we definitely want to stay away from them when we're over 50 because we have insulin resistance, men and women both. But here's where the things get a little muddy. So I have a lot of 50 plus clients that are trying to lose weight, and they are now buying like the bean pastas, and they're buying the corn pastas, and they're buying the gluten-free pastas made from a variety of things. They're buying, and they're eating, so they're buying the byproduct of the starchy vegetables and the grains, and they're also eating whole grains, brown rice, white rice. It's a whole grain, although it's robbed of its fiber. But brown rices and like all the ones I just mentioned to you, steel cut oats and amaranth and quinoa and the grain family. All right. So now here is my hack when you're over 50. If you have been doing what I just said, kind of staying away from the refined products, but eating the whole grains, so having brown rice with your dinner, then you are going to, if you are in that category, you're eating the whole grains, but you're finding that you're not losing weight, even on the right quote unquote calorie program or the macronutrient balance that you're following, you're nailing it, but you're not seeing the scale go down. Here is my hack for my over 50 crowd. I'm going to suggest to you, you have your starchy carbs in your meals, but you do a lateral switch and you avoid the grain products, whether they be whole grain, processed grains, white grains, yellow grains, whatever. You're going to replace them. You're not going to avoid and eliminate starchy carbs, but instead of having like bean pasta, you're going to have the meal that you would have had with the pasta, but you're going to actually eat the actual bean. Instead of having the gluten-free corn tortillas, you're going to have like corn kernels on your plate or mixed in with something to replace using the flour version of it. All right. And so you're going to try and choose your starches from the whole food vegetable sources. So again, what is that? I said it already, but I'm going to repeat it because it's noting repeating. All your potatoes, white potato. And I know everyone's like, oh, white potatoes, they're the worst for you. That's when you're doing a glycemic index review, but you don't, and that would be if you're eating white potatoes alone. But you're not eating white potatoes alone. You're going to have it with a protein or with some other products, foods, vegetables, and you're going to have it with, a little bit of fat. Maybe you're going to have some mashed avocado with that and use that as like as a wet for your potato. My point is the white potato is not going to be the high glycemic index that you're reading about when you're looking at just the glycemic index on a chart, because it's going to be tempered by the other foods you eat with it. So all your potatoes, white, purple, red, sweet potatoes, you want to focus on them as your starch as opposed to brown rice. Or beans of all the varieties I've already mentioned. You want to have that as a side or mixed with vegetables as opposed to having a bean pasta. You want to have a winter squash that's been cut up and grilled, cut up acorn squash, or maybe roasted or broiled in the oven, and use that as your starchy vegetable. Or maybe you chop that up and you mix it with some beets and rutabagas and you broil them with, with a brushing on of maybe some sesame or avocado oil and some spices and seasoning. But you're having the starchy vegetable as your carb or your starch as opposed to brown rice. So what I'm suggesting is for my over 50 crowd, women, especially postmenopausal, and men 50 plus, if you are doing what you think is all the right things, you're following a plan, you're nailing the calories, you're nailing the macronutrient balance, and you're still not seeing weight loss, then my tip to you is move off the grain products, whole grain products, refined grain products, all of them, and use the starchy vegetables as the carb, the starch in your meals. So at breakfast, instead of having oatmeal, this might be, you might have polenta and use that with some scrambled eggs and some sauteed peppers and onions and some avocado oil instead of oatmeal as your breakfast. Which you might even have with, like an egg and some nuts thrown into the oatmeal. But the point I'm trying to make is that you wanted to put your meals, when you're choosing what to have in your meals, you want to put your starchy carbs as your starch. Your starchy vegetables as your starchy carb, and replace that in light of having the grain products. My experience is when I do that one lateral move, and it's not a really big move, and people come to enjoy, it's a little bit of thinking out of the box when you're not using the bread products like the wraps and the English muffins and the breads, but these other, you can take a sweet potato and cook it and then slice it into long slices and use that as a bread to have some scrambled eggs or whatever put over the top of it as you would toast. Okay. So these starchy vegetables are very amenable to being used just as the grain products are in all your meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and even snacks. But what I'm telling you is if you're over 50 and you're not seeing weight loss the way you are expecting to, and you're struggling with it, but you're doing a plan and you're following it to a T, mark my words, take it to starchy vegetables to replace the grain products and give it a week or two, and then come back to the site and give me a feedback on the bottom on the comments and tell me what you notice. Okay? So, to reiterate, if you're over 50, definitely a female who's been postmenopause, definitely a male over 50, you want to move your choice of carbohydrates from in the starchy category to the starchy vegetables and replace the grains with those starchy vegetables. And it is my experience that you're going to see that scale start going down without having to eliminate carbs completely and keeping carbs in your eating plan and in your meal plan that you like, that are satisfying and sustainable. All right. So now, if you're finding that this is valuable and you're getting some insights from this series so far, although this is only episode 2, I have 4 more to go. I invite you to go to my website where I have a shop page, and then underneath that, there's a drop-down menu, and it's e-resources. And if you scroll through that, I have menus on there for men, and then I have menus for women, both over 50, that give you meal ideas outlined for what I just explained to you about the starchy vegetables instead of the grains. And that may be a valuable resource to you as you're moving through your 50s, 60s, and 70s to get some ideas for how to put the meals together with the hack or the tip that I just gave you. So check that out, everybody. And I hope you're enjoying the video series. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at video number 3, episode number 3 in this series on how to eat for weight loss when you're over 50 for both men and women. Thanks for joining. Have a great day and be well. Thanks for listening, everybody. And if you'd like to have access to some of my additional resources, I can be found at Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and on my website, www.judyterrell.com.